Welcome, everyone. This is the Detroit Sports Podcast, episode 39 of the DocNJock Sports Show. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me is a man a few weeks away from his wedding, my cousin, Adam Strozinski.
I hate you. You suck. You are stupid.
What's up, cuz?
Not too much, bro. I think we should maybe clarify, because I was getting some Twitter action and some Facebook action about the whole thing with me being married. Just so everybody knows, I have been married once before, and I'm getting remarried to the same woman. We're just doing it all over again one more time because we had some certain circumstances that were a little bit personal that we kind of had to rush things through to sit there and kind of take care of stuff. So just want everybody to be aware and understand what was going on there.
So just before we kick this bad boy off, are you ready to take the plunge? Because as your cousin and as someone I think that considers myself to be your friend, I have to warn you, even though you are technically married, things change once you have the ceremony and the party, and things do occur. So I have to give you the obligatory, you want to roll out to Vegas in a couple weeks, bro?
I just want to go to Vegas, period.
We can definitely bounce out and skip that whole ordeal with all the drama and all the vendors and all that stuff. We can bounce out, no problem. I'll be there.
No, man, I got a good one. She's good. She takes care of me. She holds me down. She makes sure I can do everything that I got to do and make sure that everything works out roses for me. So she's good to go.
Man, oh man, we're getting bombarded with weather.
Is that hail?
I think it's probably hail going on tonight.
I'm going to go outside. My car's going to have huge dents, and it's going to look like the moon fell on my car.
We got a great podcast going on for everyone today. We are going to talk about the Tigers, their current hot streak. They are, we'll talk about it, the significance of the hot streak. They are right now with the best record in Major League Baseball. We're going to talk about, the debut of Robbie Ray. He's kind of quieting the talk a little bit around general manager Dave Dombrowski in terms of the whole Fister ordeal. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the moves the Tigers have made recently. We are going to play a round of Jock Jams. The Jock, Adam Strozinski, is going to handle all the questions from me. And I got a good feeling we're gonna have to touch on the NFL Draft, which is going to take place tonight as you guys listen to this podcast.
The draft!
The NFL Draft, the much-awaited NFL Draft. I don't really like the delay this year, man. It was too long.
It was way too long. I didn't like it either. They're talking about kicking it back in another week, maybe two.
No, I don't think they waited too long.
I think it's silly if you do that.
Exactly.
Too much. I mean, half these guys have plummeted from being first-round All-Stars to being sixth-round busts. So I don't think you can sit there and wait much longer. Next thing you know, you're going to have nobody to draft in the first round. It'd be horrible.
And then to wrap up the podcast, we're going to hit on, the Pistons a little bit in terms of their coaching search. Another coach got fired that may be a likely candidate that could come in here and turn the Pistons around. Stay tuned. We'll talk about the coach that got recently fired and that may help the Pistons. You ready to kick this bad boy off?
I can't wait. I'm just hoping that we don't end up dying or getting blown away, taken off to Kansas or something. I'm not sure. You got Toto with you?
Even if it's raining, hailing, tornadoes, Michigan weather, we're here to do this podcast because we are dedicated, we are crazy, we are getting our drink on before we get this podcast going, man. Because the Tigers on a roll. Currently, as we speak, they are 19-9, and we really have to pay attention to when our competitors play the Houston Astros because they are so bad. It's basically free wins. I mean, the Tigers are on a roll, coming in winning 7 straight. Do you know that their last loss was back in April to the Twins? I mean, 7 straight victories. We are playing great baseball, and the Tigers are led by Victor Martinez and Miguel Cabrera. A lot of good has come from this winning streak. We're playing very good. We're in first place in the AL Central, and on Tuesday night we got a chance to look at Robbie Ray coming up from the minor leagues. Cuz, what was your impression of the performance in his major league debut of Robbie Ray? What did you like?
Before we get so hyped up about Robbie Ray, I want to pump the brakes a little bit. Generally, when there's a talented kid who comes up from AAA, he tends to do well. I don't think as well as we had seen and had expected Robbie Ray to do. You got to realize he threw 5.1 innings. He struck out 5 batters. He had 1 walk, 1 earned run. That was incredible. Incredible. I think he had 5 ground ball outs and he had 10 fly outs, which is awesome. The kid looked really good up there. But I think there's going to be a lot to tell with his second start. Now, there's just a little bit of tape out there. We really have to take that second start serious. And you got to realize, too, he's going against guys who might be 4A, if not they're AAA players. I mean, Houston's not a good team. There's no way to put it besides they're just a really, really bad team. So I think pump the brakes a little bit. He was impressive. He did look good. Remember the competition, though, and now that there's a little bit of tape out there on him, the second start is going to be very, very telling. If he can do the same thing again with a second start, I think there's something here, and there's something for us to talk about, and there's something for us to be excited about as Detroit fans.
Yeah, he was making a start because obviously Dabrowski and Ausmus had seen what he did in the minors, coming in with a 1.53 ERA, 21 strikeouts, only 5 walks in 29 innings. So he was doing some good. He was doing some damage in the minor leagues, and so they brought him up. And so obviously what everyone saw, he kind of throws low 90s, not a flamethrower. Most of his pitches averaged around 90.8 miles per hour. He has good control of the fastball, throws a lot of changeups. He mixes up his speeds, and he threw at least 24 changeups in Tuesday's game. And pitching coach Jeff Jones said he's still working on his curveball, and he's still, a work in progress. And so, yes, as you said, pump the brakes. Today in the paper, writer Tony Paul brought up Andy Van Hecken from 2002. He was kind of saying the same thing you were. He was like, you know what, let's pump the brakes. He had a great debut. Yes, it was versus Houston, but he wrote a story back in 2002. Andy Van Hecken was called up, pitched a complete game shutout versus Cleveland in his debut. Left-handed pitcher. His next 3 starts were horrific. Never saw the major league mound again. He's been in the minor leagues now from 2002 until 2011. So he put the kibosh on our excitement. But I was kind of, I don't care. I was excited. I was like, you know what? We traded Doug Fister for this guy. He obviously has talent. And so for this year, the expectation then likely can be he can maybe move into the bullpen.
I was just about to ask you about that.
I think he can, if his next start in relief for Anibal Sanchez, if he shows the continued progress, if he can get batters out versus a real major league team, if he can handle the pressure, then you throw him in the bullpen because Phil Koch is destroying the bullpen. And right now you got Chamberlain, kind of the 8th inning guy. Mm-hmm. You can kind of mix and match what you do. And then when Joel Hanrahan, once he recovers from...
It's like a tongue twister. You say that 3 times fast.
Exactly. Once he recovers from Tommy John surgery, he's still slated to be maybe a month away. Then we'll see what he can do. If you throw another left-handed pitcher into that bullpen, then you have more consistency. But right now, we're doing what we need to do against these awful teams. I mean, yes, the streak is good. I give them credit for winning these games, but we've beaten Chicago, Kansas City, and now we're in the midst of a 4-game series versus Houston. You have to kind of temper that streak a little bit and understand, pump the brakes. Let's understand that we're not playing the cream of the crop right now in the American League. But coming up soon, we have a good couple tests. Coming up next, we got a 3-game set versus Minnesota at home. Then we hit the road. Then we start playing some tougher teams in terms of 3 games versus Baltimore, 3 games versus Boston, 3 games on the road versus Cleveland, and then at home, we return home for a 4-game series versus Texas. So the rest of this month is shaping up to be very interesting and should be telling as to what this team can achieve. But right now, like I said, 10 games over 500. We're doing what we got to do, and Miguel Cabrera and Victor Martinez are leading the way. You can't ask for more, cuz.
I want to go back to what you said about Robbie Ray. I think what you do with him is exactly what you hit on. You basically give him the Drew Smyly treatment. If he's able to come out in his second start and he looks just as good, just as dominant, I think you throw him in that bullpen and you bring him along in the bullpen. You let him get all that major league experience. Granted, we had Denny McClain on, and Denny McClain basically said it's a totally different mindset for a guy coming out of the bullpen as opposed to a starter. But I think you sit there and you bring Robbie Ray out of the bullpen. You let him get that major league experience because he's tearing it up in AAA right now. So he's got no place to go but up. So you bring him out of the bullpen. It helps solidify that bullpen because now you have a lefty arm who can get lefties and righties out. And you don't have to worry about that being a giant crater for you and just a sinkhole that is just basically killing you in games, because Phil Koch goes in there and you have to give the guy a 9-run lead in order for you to sit there and win 9-4, 11-4, because he just goes out there and just gives up runs. He's awful right now. He needs to get sent down or just be outright released. So I think you put Robbie Ray in the bullpen. If he has another solid outing, let that help solidify that back end of that bullpen a little bit. And then when you get Joel Hanrahan in, it'll really, I think that whole bullpen looks a lot better, looks more consistent, looks a lot more solid. And I think going forward, you now have a team that can legitimately compete for a World Series. I know that they're 10 games above 500 right now, possibly 11 once they get done sweeping the Astros. But I think that with those additions, I think that bullpen is now 10 times better than it was at the start of the season.
In earlier podcasts and with interviews that we've had with the likes of Andrew Vigliotti from Outside Pitch MLB, you were very, very adamant that you did not like the Fister trade. Now we are,
Still don't.
30 games in, you're seeing what Smiley can do. You're seeing an improved Porcello. You're seeing what Robbie Ray can potentially be. Your attitude has not really changed regarding the Fister trade, knowing that he's not really doing a whole hell of a lot out there in Washington. Because you gotta think about it like this. Dave Dombrowski, his job is to not only worry about this team now, but also build pieces for the future. And so they said, okay, we got Porcello, we got Smiley, I got to roll the dice. Who am I going to keep? Fister was the odd man out, in my opinion.
It is making me sit there and rethink my stance. I'm not ready to sit there and say that I was wrong and Dave Dombrowski was 100% right. I'm still holding back, and I'm still kind of sitting back and watching everything unfold. I probably won't be able to sit back and completely admit that I was wrong and that he was 100% right until probably right around the All-Star break. At that point, if everything is still moving the way it's moving right now, then I have no problem coming on this show saying that I was dead wrong. Dave Dombrowski's a genius, and he's the smartest general manager in all of baseball. But until the All-Star break, I'm going to say temper your expectations, pump the brakes, and let's just kind of sit back and let's watch how this season unfolds. Because I still really think I really think Fister was one of the best pitchers in all of Major League Baseball, especially for what he was expected to do with this rotation. I mean, the guy was damn good. He was damn good. And it's not very often that you see a guy who can go play basketball because he was so freaking tall, go up on a mound and then just sit there, and he was a ground ball pitcher, just dominate with a bad defense. Because you gotta remember, the defense that was behind him was not like the defense that's behind him right now. It was a much slower, it was a really bad defense behind him. I mean, you had Cabrera at third. You've got Johnny Peralta, who at times looked like a pylon. And you had Omar Infante. And then you had the big Tubalard on first. So it was a really bad defense behind him. He's a ground ball pitcher. So his ERA, I think, would have fell at least a whole run, maybe more, with this defense that he's got right now. So I'm just going to say temper the expectations. And if come All-Star break, everything looks like it looks right now, I'll come on the show and I'll admit I'm an idiot. I know nothing about baseball.
Now, Victor Martinez was not even aware of this stat, and I'm going to ask you, cuz, were you aware that Victor Martinez went 154 games, including the postseason, without being called out on strikes? That streak was broken yesterday. He went 579 at-bats where he did not take 3 called strikes. That he was asked that after yesterday's game where the streak was broken, and he was like, really? I would have swung at the third pitch then. Now, I'm not saying strikeouts, but where he was not called out. 154 games, 579 at-bats where he did not get called out on strikes. That means the guy sees the ball well, is hitting the ball all over the place. He's becoming the Victor Martinez of old, and he's recovered almost fully from the knee injury. And he's becoming a guy that you almost have to say, you know what, we got to keep this guy. He's single-handedly carrying us. And in tonight's game versus Houston, already a home run, Miguel Cabrera home run. We're leading the game. We are doing what we got to do. How important is Victor Martinez to the Tigers, and how important has he been in this streak?
I think his health means a ton to this team, because if he's not healthy, there's a giant gap in that lineup. And he can do it from the left side, he can do it from the right side. So I was not aware of that stat. That's a great stat. He went almost a whole season without being called out on strikes, which is outstanding and outrageous all at the same time. But I think you're right. I think him, basically, you get to see what he's doing right now. I think with that home run that you talked about right now, he didn't hit his 6th home run, I think, until June 22nd of last season. So I think he's 100% healthy. I think he's back. As long as he stays healthy, I think this lineup just keeps churning out runs and looks as dominant as they've been looking. So he's extremely important to this team. Him and Miguel Cabrera, those are the 2 guys that basically make this lineup work and make it run the way it has to run. So he's extremely important. I think that's a great stat. I had no idea. I was unaware of that.
Yeah, and so right now, the opinion is that, Dave Dombrowski's moves have kind of come to fruition to help this team. He's kind of put it in his mind that, you know what, we can let go of Prince Fielder in terms of his production, and that'll be made up by Ian Kinsler and Victor Martinez's bat. They felt that, with Victor Martinez being the everyday DH, sometimes catching, that his production can help this team get runs and help them, move runners along. In terms of the style of play, we're being aggressive. We're getting we're getting runners on base. They're moving to second base, getting into scoring position, and then our guys are bringing them home. There was an early concern regarding Miguel Cabrera that maybe was a little bit too early, but it was concerning because he was batting like 206. It was concerning because he wasn't hitting home runs, he wasn't making good contact, but as of late, he's kind of warmed up a little bit. He's gotten his batting average up to 293 with 23 RBIs. The big concern, though, cuz right now, his home runs are down. Where are you standing right now with Miguel Cabrera? Are you feeling comfortable he is going to warm up, or maybe do you still got to keep an eye on him until maybe the end of June?
I don't ever worry about Miguel Cabrera. I think he'll be just fine. I think it's how he is. Once the weather kind of sits there and warms up, lightens up, that guy catches on fire, and he does what he does. And baseball is one of those games where it's based on just streaks, long streaks. So he'll sit there, he might dry up early on in the season where he's not producing really well, but then he'll go on a tear where he's batting almost 400, 450, and by the end of the season, he'll be batting 300, he'll have 25, maybe 30, maybe 40 home runs, and he'll have 160 RBI. Everything will be great, and what we're talking about now will just kind of be a bleep on the radar.
And it's kind of true. Maybe it is the Detroit Sports Podcast curse in reverse. We talk about Alex Avila slumping. We talk about Miguel Cabrera slumping. Boom, they come on track. They heat up in unbelievable fashion. And Alex Avila, got a couple days rest, saw Halladay do his thing, and maybe that rest was good for him. Halladay is a viable backup, got some key hits, and you know what? Alex Avila's come back swinging the bat on fire. And I just think that
Halladay looked really good in that small streak, that small sample size. He looked very clutch. It looked very good.
It did. And something that was brought up, in the media and something that kind of was shown on film is Alex Avila's best when he's aggressive. And so sometimes as Tigers fans, we get a little nervous because he likes to swing at the first pitch. But for Alex Avila, he's got to be aggressive. When he's sitting there trying to work the count, things like that, he's going to tend to be prone to get out quicker. He's going to tend to be someone that may not be able to, adjust with 2 strikes on him. He has come back. He has made the adjustments, and that's what I think we are going to have to live with Alex Avila. And on the other end, I think that we have to appreciate the fact that he is working with one of the top 5 staffs in all of baseball. And that has to be appreciated. He's been working with Porcello. He's been working with Smiley. He knows the top 2 horses. He knows their tendencies, their wants, and their needs, and what they need to do to be successful. And so you can't just discount the fact that he's a crappy hitter and not really appreciate the fact that he is a serviceable catcher that has worked with these guys and has brought them along. And that's really something that we have to appreciate. And hopefully the bat comes around, because in the postseason, the significance of runs is so important that if he goes into his slump, just do it during the middle of the season and work your way out of it and become productive in the postseason. Because right now, as we're talking, everything is going good. Things are looking up. We are going to probably sweep the Houston Astros, and we have to, continue to watch when we play them, because when our opponent, because like I said, they are so awful. Like if we're only 2 games up and the Twins are going to play Houston, we got to worry. So because we can't count on Houston to get wins for us later in the season. So far things are looking good for the Tigers. I'm okay. I'll love to check back in a couple weeks and see how they're doing.
Yeah, I agree with you. The biggest issue with Alex Avila, his bat, like you had said, and I think he brings a noodle to the game. I think his arm is like a wet noodle. I don't think he has a bad out percentage when he's trying to throw guys out at second. And you can run on him all day long just because he's either not accurate or he's not quick enough to get guys out at second. So if that bat can come alive and that bat can kind of stay juiced up through the playoffs, he's a great defensive catcher. He handles the staff well. You can live with him not being able to get guys out at second as long as he's batting somewhere around 250, maybe 260, 270. You can live with that. This team will be okay as long as he can stay somewhere around there.
Sounds good. Everyone, stay tuned for the special NFL Draft edition of Jock Jams. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Right now, it's time for a special NFL Draft version of Jock Jams. As you guys are downloading this podcast, the NFL Draft is going to take place this evening on Thursday, and the first round looks to be very exciting. The teams are on the clock with the Houston Texans holding the first pick, likely willing to trade down. A lot of people are talking that, you know what, they don't want that first pick. They are willing to trade down. But reports are kind of coming in that they are asking for 2 to 3 first-round picks as well as maybe a second for that pick. So they are bringing the hammer. If you want that first pick and you want potentially to get Jadeveon Clowney, then you're going to have to pay up for Houston. Because Houston, I think, wants to trade down and take a quarterback. They really want a quarterback. And maybe, if all signs point to, head coach O'Brien wanting that prototypical quarterback, they might be willing to trade down and get Blake Bortles. So that might happen. I'm not sure. I'm looking forward to getting the Jock's perspective. You ready, cuz?
Let's do it.
All right, cuz. The first pick is being held by Houston. What are the odds of them actually selecting number 1 tomorrow night?
I'm going to put it at about, if I have to give you a percentage, I'm going to put it at probably about 30%. I think they move out of that first pick. I think that Atlanta's been really key. There's been a lot of talk about Atlanta going after Jadeveon Clowney. And Jadeveon Clowney has come out and said that he wants to go to Atlanta in so many words. So I think Atlanta, you've seen them do it before. I love Thomas Dimitroff, and I love his feathered hair. I think Thomas Dimitroff, Atlanta Falcons, I think they move up and they take that number 1 overall pick, and I think they take Jadeveon Clowney. I think Houston moves back. I think they fall to 6, and I think at 6 they can either then package something up, and if there's something there that they want, they can maybe move back up. But I think maybe they stay at 6, and I think maybe they would then take Blake Bortles, or if Johnny Manziel falls, you take Johnny Manziel, because I think you're right on. I think they want a quarterback.
Some of the drama that takes place in watching the NFL Draft is seeing the players that have to sit there at the table with all their friends and family. And the scene that comes to mind is Aaron Rodgers. He was touted, everyone thought, okay, this guy is going to go top 5, maybe even number 1, and he fell all the way to 24. And then they keep going back to him. How are you feeling? And you got to kind of sit there and answer the questions from the media. What's going on, dude? And you can tell that he just does not want to be there.
It was one of the best and worst and most awkward scenes ever. Because once it got to pick 22, he was like, "What? Why are you still in my face?"
Exactly. So, cuz, this year, is there going to be anybody sitting at the table in this 2014 draft that maybe was expected to be top 10 but may fall out? A lot of people are talking that it's going to be, Johnny Manziel. Is there somebody that you think is just going to be sitting all alone, twiddling his thumbs in the draft?
I think the largest potential to fall and to fall heavily is Johnny Manziel. But I think there's a good possibility that Eric Ebron might. Right now he's projected to go in the top 10. I think there's a good possibility that he could slip to late in the draft just because he has trouble on the field. He has trouble blocking guys. The guy's got great hands. He can run great routes. He's a large target. He's a big guy. But it's hard for a tight end to make it on the field when you can't block for your run scheme and protect your quarterback. So there's a good possibility that he might slip and he might fall as well. But I think Johnny Manziel has probably the most potential to fall the furthest and the hardest.
Now, before we got into Jock Jams, did I hear you correctly in the break that you're going to miss the first round for school? What the fuck, cuz? Skip it.
I've got a class that I have to go to, I can't miss it. I have one class that I have to go to, and the worst part is it starts at 6, it doesn't get out till right around 10:30. So I will be getting home right as the first round of the draft is basically wrapping up. So I have to DVR it and watch it. I'm working on something where I can stream it live in class and watch it, but depending on what we're going to be doing tomorrow inside that class, I'm probably going to have to miss large portions of the draft. But I will have it DVR'd. This will be the first time in 15 years where I'm not sitting on my couch watching it.
First time in 15 years you're not watching the NFL draft for a single class.
One class.
Dedication. That's dedication, cuz.
Hurts my heart.
I'm gonna text you all the way through and just ruin it for you. And I might text you. I might text you correct stuff. I might text you wrong stuff. I'm gonna be like, the Lions moved up to number 1, and you'll be like, what?
I'll start shouting in the middle of class. Be asked to leave. I'm like, that's cool. I'm going to watch the draft.
All right, that's dedication. You know what? I'll give you credit. That's more important than the draft. But don't worry, the dedicated one, myself, the doc, I will be in front of the TV watching the draft and waiting patiently for the Detroit Lions number 10 pick. And I'm hoping, not too confident, I'm hoping they take the right guy. All right, cuz, let's get into it. Everyone and their mama has done a mock draft. Some people take it seriously, some people don't. Some people are hardcore looking at each and every individual analyst as to what they're doing. Myself, personally, not so much. I do my research in terms of who's the hot player, who are the players that my team needs, what are their needs, and who in our division, what are they looking to do. That's what I care about. But because you asked and you were nice about it, you were very courteous and respectful in asking me to do a mock draft, I did one. I'm going to give you mine real fast, and then we'll get into yours and have a little chat.
Okay.
All right. One, I got Houston taking the pick, Jadeveon Clowney. 2, St. Louis, I got him taking the tackle, Greg Robinson from Auburn. 3, Jacksonville, got him taking Khalil Mack. Johnny Manziel, despite all the rumors, I got him going to Cleveland at 4. Sammy Watkins being drafted by Oakland. Jake Matthews, the tackle from Texas A&M, going to Atlanta. Mike Evans goes to Tampa Bay. They need another receiver to complement Vincent Jackson. I got Minnesota taking Aaron Donald, the defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. I got Buffalo taking Taylor Lewan from Michigan. And I got the Detroit Lions. I know I've said it in the past, I think they're taking HaHa Clinton-Dix. But this week, got some more research and analysis on Kyle Fuller, cornerback, Virginia Tech. I think he's kind of shot up the charts in terms of the ranking. And I think if he's there, if he's available, my Lions, you will not be disappointed by Kyle Fuller, cornerback, Virginia Tech. If anyone out there from the organization is listening, before you draft, Kyle Fuller. That's capital K-Y-L-E, capital F-U-L-L-E-R, cornerback, not quarterback, not wide receiver, cornerback, Virginia Tech. Please draft defense, and please draft in the secondary if you can, Lions. Cuz, what say you?
Well, we have a lot of things that are very similar. And when I put mine together, I sat there and I tried to look at best player available, and then I tried to look at the team's needs. And if the best player available matched up with their needs, that's the guy who I went with. And I did this all based on nobody's trading, nobody's moving, everything is staying the same. So with the first pick, I have the Houston Texans taking the best player in the NFL draft, Jadeveon Clowney. I've got the St. Louis Rams, who need they need help on the offensive line. They take offensive tackle Greg Robinson. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they need a quarterback. Johnny Manziel's up there. He's been the number 1 rated quarterback through most of all this draft guru breakdown BS. So I've got them taking quarterback Johnny Manziel. I've got the Cleveland Browns, who basically need just about everything. So they need a linebacker. Best linebacker out there, according to everybody after the combine numbers, outside linebacker Khalil Mack. Oakland Raiders, they love speed, they love fast guys, they love wide receivers, they love flash. So they're going to take Sammy Watkins. I've got the Atlanta Falcons, who need offensive line help as well. I've got them taking Jake Matthews, offensive tackle. Tampa Bay, you said it, they need a wide receiver. They've got nobody to really throw the ball to except for Vincent Jackson. They're going to take Mike Evans. Minnesota needs a quarterback. You got Christian Ponder and the crew that kind of backs up Christian Ponder, who's like 6 different dudes. So they're taking Blake Bortles. Buffalo needs a tight end, wants a tight end. Eric Ebron, he's supposed to be cut from the Jimmy Graham type cloth. So I think they take Eric Ebron. And then our Detroit Lions, I think this is going to make you happy. I think it's going to make you real happy. I think they're going to take Darqueze Dennard. Bam, bitches! The reasoning behind this, when I look at Darqueze Dennard, I sit there and I say to myself, what team does he look like he would fit perfectly on? What team does he look like he would be, like he wouldn't look out of place? He would just go there and he would fit in so supremely because he's that type of player and they play that type of defense. And I think Pittsburgh Steelers. And in my head, I say, hey, the Steelers have done everything right for so long. If it's good enough for the Steelers, why wouldn't he be good enough for the Lions? Because when I watch Darqueze Dennard play, I just envision him in a black and gold uniform. I'm going Darqueze Dennard for the Detroit Lions wearing Honolulu blue.
Now that would be a great pick. I would be jumping up and down if they picked Darqueze Dennard. Obviously, a physical corner has been in a program that's designed for pro corners. I would have no problem with Darqueze Dennard. Now, yes,
I had a hard time with that too because I was going back and forth because Anthony Barr was there too, and I've been really high on Justin Gilbert, so I had a real hard time there being Detroit. So if I was Detroit and it came down to that and you have those 3 guys who you still want and who you can still take and would fit perfectly for what you're trying to do, I would totally try to move out. move
Now,
back.
a lot of talk today on the radio, a lot of talk in the media. If the Lions take Sammy Watkins, then I would almost 99.9% tell you they're not interested in winning. They're interested in selling
That's
tickets.
exactly what it would be.
That would be exactly what it would be. It would be like, you know what? We got Sammy Watkins, we got Matthew Stafford, we got Megatron. Come down to the Ford Field, and we'll see what happens. And I agree with that 100% because Sammy Watkins is just obviously Sammy Watkins has talent. He's well respected. He just doesn't, we have an abundance of wide receivers. We have enough talent on the offense to get the job done, and it's just time for the players that we already have that we've signed, Golden Tate, Matthew Stafford, Megatron, to improve their game, as well as with the tight ends and the running backs, Joique Bell, Reggie Bush. You got Pettigrew, and you got Joseph Fourier. You got enough. You have to now start building what will win you a championship, and that's the defense. So we'll see tonight what the Lions do and what they do this weekend in terms of the draft. I'm hoping, my little fan heart is hoping that your man crush, Brian Sanders, does influence this draft, does influence these picks, and doesn't let Martin Mayhew fall into the line of what Matt Millen would do and draft wide receivers, the sexy pick. No sexy.
I feel like the Lions should make like those little bracelets and to be like, what would Matt Millen do? And then just at the end of it, draft a receiver.
And it's just that's what the Lions fans' fear is. Martin Mayhew is a disciple from Matt Millen, and I'm sure they still chat from time to time. I just don't want any of that influence to take place in this draft. So please, Lions, do the right thing, get the right players, and hopefully this draft will be entertaining and to help the 2014 team win, because we're close. We can get to the playoffs. We just now have to build a team that hopefully can start the path to the championship. Who knows? This season will be a big teller in terms of where we're at in terms of the organization. Cuz very good. I'm excited. I'm excited to watch the draft, and it was very good. Jock Jams special NFL Draft Edition.
I'm excited to stream the draft, and I'm excited to then go home and watch all of it and be like a zombie on Friday because I stayed up way too damn late rewatching everything that I just listened to while I was in class. I hate school.
Speaking of the draft, you can get all NFL jerseys. If Darqueze Dennard is drafted by the Lions, you can get his jersey first from DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can get great deals from all sports vendors. You can get great sports gear. DetroitSportsPodcast.com, 24/7 deals on sports gear, memorabilia, and tickets. Don't miss out. Don't miss out on the new fresh merchandise that's going to come out after the draft. Look for us for great deals. And you can continue to support the podcast by subscribing via iTunes, downloading us via our host site, Podomatic, and messaging us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. We appreciate all the support, and it helps keep us going, and it helps to motivate us to keep doing these podcasts week after week. And we appreciate the positive feedback that everyone's been giving us. Stay tuned. After the break, we're going to hit on a new coach that's available for the Pistons if they choose to look at him. Stay tuned. We'll give our thoughts. Thanks, everyone, for staying tuned to the Detroit Sports Podcast, the Doc and Jock Show. Cuz, what a great weekend. I heard your interview on the podcast with Ryan Neiman on the podcast in terms of recapping some of the Game 7s that took place. One coach, though, unfortunately, lost his job after losing to the Clippers in Game 7. Mark Jackson, fired after a 51-win season.
Screw you! You're fired!
After leaving the announce booth, takes the job at Golden State, takes them to the playoffs multiple seasons consecutively. He gets whacked. Here in Detroit, we're all too familiar with this scenario. Rick Carlisle, exact same situation. And this reeks of, you know what? Mark Jackson, with the players, all good. Coaching, good enough to get him to the playoffs. But his relationships with ownership, his relationship with the rest of the organization in terms of the help and upper management, wasn't too good if you're going to get your ass whacked after a 51-win season and making it to the first round of the playoffs. Now, yes, you can think that, you know what, maybe they should have advanced further with talent like Draymond Green, Steph Curry, David Lee, but they didn't. The Clippers, I think, are on a mission, and, you know, they were fueled by the Sterling controversy. They had the important home court advantage. And in basketball, that's huge in terms of Game 7s. But Mark Jackson is available. He's got potential as a head coach. And so people are saying, okay, Rick Carlisle, flamed out in Detroit, but he just stepped on to Dallas, won himself an NBA title. What are your thoughts about Mark Jackson? Would he be a good fit to bring him here to the Pistons with this group of talent that we got?
I think he has a great pedigree. I think he can do great things as a coach because he did great things with Golden State. You do have to realize that all coaches look really good when they have talent. The situation here in Detroit is slightly toxic, and that's to kind of put it mildly. At the end of the season, you heard a lot of rumors about a lot of things that kind of went on inside that locker room, and how there was a lot of conflicts and a lot of drama that was going on. Mark Jackson here, could he maybe kind of squash a lot of that toxic nature? I don't know. I'm not sure. The thing is, you have to realize that the New York job's open. The Los Angeles job is now open. So Mark Jackson, I think New York's going to go after Steve Kerr. They're pushing hard for Steve Kerr. But I think he would probably look at either the Knicks or the LA job before he would even consider the Detroit job. I don't know if he would even bother coming here, and that's the issue. Do I think he would fit in good? I think he can relate to his players. He can communicate with his players. He can get his players to focus and do exactly what they need to do because you've seen him do it with Golden State. And I think he's a good coach. I think he might be a great coach given the proper pieces and given a proper amount of time. But I don't know if it'll work now with this Piston team. I think they still need at least one more coach to kind of get them near or in the playoffs, and then you can maybe bring Mark Jackson in. He could be the guy to kind of seal the deal, almost like with Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle was that guy who basically got them out of the doldrums, got them into the playoffs, and then you brought Larry Brown in, and he won you that championship. So I think Mark Jackson might be that Larry Brown piece that you bring in once your team is getting to the playoffs and just getting beat in the playoffs.
I disagree. I think that if you bring in Mark Jackson, you bring him in now to change the culture because that's what he's got experience in. He doesn't have experience in the title picture in terms of, taking a team to the NBA Finals. He's got experience taking a young group of talent and getting them organized and playing in a better organized fashion. Yes, Golden State was, you guys got to remember, Golden State was awful. And so now they've gotten to the playoffs consecutively, and his players would die for him. Everyone, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, they all went to bat for him. Why? A lot of times these coaches, when they leave, peace out. The players don't care. They're collecting fat checks. They really, they say what they have to say. But it says a lot when players come out in the media and support their coach and say, you know what, this is the guy that really was supportive to us and helped us. The problem with Mark Jackson is he's the kind of a guy that has this bunker mentality where he's like me and the players and nobody else. And right now, Goris seems like he's kind of the guy that kind of wants to be involved, wants to stick his nose in. And so
and that's why it's toxic. That's why I don't think it works. Do you know?
But no, he does.
I don't think he's the guy right now. I think that's why you bring him in later because the situation here is so up in the air and it's so bad right now. I don't think Mark Jackson would fit properly. I don't think he would be given. It'd almost be like what Joe Dumars did, where he would just bring coach. It was like a revolving door at coaches. You'd sit there, you'd be here for a year and a half, and then you'd be out. And I think he'd just be one of those guys.
You think he's a championship level coach?
I think given the right pieces, he could win you a championship. I mean, he did. You said it yourself. He did really good things in Golden State, and he did that underneath an ownership that did not like him, did not want him there. They brought him in. They were impressed with what he did his first year. The second season, things kind of got a little bit bitter. The third season, there was nothing but rot in there, and that's why he had to go, because him and ownership butted heads. So I think if you give him the proper pieces, you give him the proper tools, and you let him do what he has to do and don't interfere with what he has to do, I think, yeah, you could probably win you a championship.
What the hell is that about?
Yeah, see, the reason why you bring him in now is I think Mark Jackson is the type of coach that could learn from his mistakes. Obviously, Rick Carlisle has stayed in Dallas a long time, and you don't hear that anymore. I just think that, sometimes the right fit in the right situation might have caused Mark Jackson to become that with that mentality. And another piece that kind of came out was ownership kind of didn't like that Mark Jackson was religious and was dedicated to his church, and that kind of irked the ownership. Lindsey Hunter has the dubious distinction of having been in 3 other situations where in a year or less, the teams that he joined, I know Phoenix is one of them, their coach got fired within the same year. So something is going on.
Lindsey Hunter's a coach killer? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, look it up. Lindsey Hunter has been with 3 different teams, and each of those teams have fired their head coach within a year of him being there. So something about him, like they were saying that, I believe it was in USA Today, was saying that Lindsey Hunter kind of is a divisive kind of person in the background. Maybe he just, says things a certain way, or he's kind of, really to the point and doesn't get along well with others. So Mark Jackson's choice of coaches is a little bit questionable right now. But I think he is capable of learning. And so in my opinion, I wrote no right away. My first primal thought when I thought about it was no. But then I thought about it and I said, okay, if he's used as the guy, as a stepping stone, as at least to get this collection of talent is young on the Pistons. If we can just get them playing together, organized, and get them to play well together, maybe Mark Jackson and Josh Smith can, figure things out together. That maybe Josh Smith can be a guy that can lead the team and actually play smart and play somewhat like he did in Atlanta. Then this collection of talent can get to that next step in terms of getting to the playoffs. And you got to remember, cuz 38 wins to 40 wins gets you in the playoffs in the East. So you don't need all that much. So Mark Jackson is a name that's out there. I think he brings a lot to the table, but at the same time, he does come with a lot of baggage. This is a tough one. That's why I say, I think it's going to, and also too, another strike against him. We're probably looking, before you hire a coach, as people told me on Twitter, you need a general manager.
You do.
And so
you don't want the owner making the head coaching hire, because then the general manager comes in and doesn't want that guy
exactly.
Here, and it's a mess.
And so one of the names on the list is an executive from Golden State. So obviously that they're looking at winning organizations in terms of executives from Golden State, Oklahoma City, teams that have won. And so if they bring in someone from Golden State, they're not going to like Mark Jackson.
Well, that's not necessarily true. That whoever that executive is might. I got to realize the issue with Mark Jackson came with the owner, with ownership. So if this guy was part of the front office and the GM, he might not have an issue with him, because from everything that I had read and everything that I had heard, was the issue was with Mark Jackson and the owner, and they for whatever reason just butted heads and didn't get along. So if you go out, you bring in this executive from Golden State, bring him in. He likes Mark Jackson. Lindsey Hunter, he used to be a point guard here, used to play here. He, almost like the prodigal son comes back, right? There's connections all over the board there for Mark Jackson, because you've got Lindsey Hunter, former Piston, bring him back in the fold. You've got whoever this new, executive is, if he's implanted as the GM for the Pistons, he likes Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson has now just insulated himself with guys who are either familiar with the Piston organization or are familiar with him, and that might just breed enough confidence. It might give him enough room and space and air to basically breathe and do what he wants to do, to where he can come in and, like you said, possibly coach these guys up, get these guys into the playoffs, and change that culture, like you had said.
Now, the owner was interviewed by CBS Sports, and so here was his first answer to the obvious question as to why. And his answer was, look, I don't think we should get into the great details of what did happen, other than to say that this is a decision that was based on what was good for the organization as a whole. And when I say the organization as a whole, I don't mean just the team and just the 15 players that are involved and the coaching staff. I mean everybody. There's 200 employees here. I just kind of think that it was more far-reaching than just ownership. He might have been a divisive guy. I think he rubbed a lot of people the wrong way.
He probably did. And you know what? That happens sometimes with really good coaches. Really good coaches sit there and they tend to argue and butt heads with ownership, and that's why they're a good coach, because they know what their team needs, they know what their players need, and sometimes really good ownership and really good leadership at the very tippy top is like that with the head coach, and there has to be that mutual respect where you guys can come together, butt heads, disagree on stuff, but at the same time, step back and look at it from each other's perspective. And in this case, I don't think ownership wanted to hear what Mark Jackson had to say, and I don't think Mark Jackson really gave two shits about what ownership had to say. And you're probably right. It was probably best that he leave that situation. He can maybe come here, though, and maybe be implanted, and if ownership and Mark Jackson can form this mentality where, like you said, almost a bunker mentality, where it's us against the world, and we can argue and we can disagree, because I think arguing and disagreeing, especially in sports, is great, because it helps you build a better product. You see it with really good football teams. They sit there and they disagree a lot on who they should draft, who they should pick up, who they should sign, and for how much they should spend. And that makes them that much better because you're able to sit there and you're able to bounce different things off of each other that are maybe totally out of left field that you weren't thinking of, but this other person had this vision and seen something a little bit different. So it might possibly work. I'm not opposed to Mark Jackson coming here at all. I think given the right talent, given the right pieces, with the situation being better than it was in Golden State, I think he could win you a championship here. I think he's smart enough. I think he knows the X's and O's in and out.
And it'll be interesting to see what Tom Gores does, because you've been paying attention now to the NBA playoffs. Let's shift focus a little bit and talk about some of the key matchups that we've been seeing now in the playoffs. First off, Indiana tied the series 1-1. A lot of talk's been about, Roy Hibbert, his disappearing act, and his 0 points, 0 rebound game. And yes, that's pretty horrid. But I just think that the media and everyone's overreacting with the swings of a series. Guys, series is 7 games. And talent usually prevails, and matchups usually prevail. I like the Pacers matchup versus the Wizards, and you had said, you were a little bit wishy-washy on the Pacers, but I just think that, I think that all this media attention on the players, on their performance, is kind of bringing them together and will help them in these series. They got through a 7-game series with Atlanta. They have been, they've been inconsistent now. I understand your point where you said, they might have blew their wad earlier in the season to try to catch Miami.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think I was wishy-washy. I wasn't 100% confident in Indiana. I think that they had...
I think you should be.
I think they had tired legs going into that first round, and that's why they look so bad at certain points in that first round. But I think you make a great point where talent always rises to the top, and matchups always win you series. And I think Indiana will beat the Wizards and will move on. I think they needed that. I think they needed that little bit of knockaround game in that first series to where they kind of got their heads busted in a little bit to kind of wake them up. I think they needed that.
And you know what stinks too? Washington Wizards in the playoffs, Toronto Raptors in the playoffs, Pistons sitting at home. Come on now. But Washington, they've kind of quietly built some talent. Bradley Beal is no joke. John Wall leading they are fast. I'm talking about John Wall gets the ball, boom, 3 seconds later, they're doing their thing. They're getting to their sets fast. And so they play a good style of ball. I like watching them.
I think Washington and Toronto will both have really good teams in the future. Really, those teams should be watched going forward. Next 3 to 4 years, if that staff can stay together, I think they can really build something and possibly contend for a title in a few years.
Yeah, and I think you and I maybe are both in agreement that Miami's playing strong. Brooklyn's going to maybe win a game, maybe 2 at the most. Miami, Indiana, please, let's clash for the chance to go to the NBA Finals. Now, looking out west, wow, cuz San Antonio, wow. You said it yourself. Greg Popovich is a great coach. Can these players really be underrated? Tony Parker, at his age, still dropping points, still a dangerous threat. They play so organized. And then you got the young guys, Kawhi Leonard. You got Tiago Splitter. And then you got, another addition in Marco Bellinelli out there. So this team looks strong.
Tiago Splitter, too.
Tiago Splitter. This team looks well coached, and they look outstanding. And so if they continue to play like that, look out. Do you think San Antonio is going to come out of the West?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think San Antonio is probably the team to beat. I think if they go and if they go and they face Miami, I think they beat Miami. If they face Indiana, I think they beat Indiana. I think they're the team who wears the crown this year. I think they've been on a mission since Game 6 of last year when they were 6 seconds away from winning a championship. I think they've been on a mission. Like, nothing else matters. We're winning a championship. And I think nobody gets that more than Greg Popovich. Popovich understands what he's got to do with these guys. He knows he's got older veterans. He knows that Tim Duncan can't sit there and can't play 40 minutes a night for 5 nights straight. He doesn't mind sitting there losing 2 or 3 games here and there during the regular season, so those guys are fresher, longer, and can go in the playoffs deeper. So I think Popovich deserves a ton of credit. He probably is one of the best coaches coaching right now. You know what? This is going to maybe sound like blasphemy, but I would take Greg Popovich over Phil Jackson.
Don't you open your mouth about the best, or I'm going to shut it for you real quick.
I mean, you're not going to get too many arguments because they've been so consistent with the same core group. I mean, the Pistons didn't even last this long with the bad boys. I mean, you're going on almost a decade of excellent basketball. Could argue maybe you could have got maybe a couple more championships and they choked away last year. That's the freshest vision that we got, is that, you guys, Game 6, what happened? I think that's something that you've said and I agree with. That should fuel their fire to continue to play well and get out of the Western Conference. But you know what? Like I said, can Kevin Durant lift the Oklahoma City Thunder past the Clippers and into that next step? Because you know what? Now he's been named the MVP of the league. Had that great speech, brought everybody to tears. But can he back it up? Because if you don't, a lot of rumors, a lot of rumblings that Russell Westbrook is going to be coveted by a lot of teams. Maybe the Pistons should covet Russell Westbrook. I'm not too sure. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Another point guard who just throws the ball all over the damn place?
But
we want that?
His shots go in the net quite often.
More than not, yeah, it's true.
More than Brandon Jennings. A lot of talk that, you know what, maybe he doesn't want to be the second fiddle, and he doesn't want to continue to take the blame as for why this team doesn't move forward. Just your thoughts on the Oklahoma City Thunder and their series versus the Clippers?
I think Oklahoma should be on guard with the Clippers, especially everything that happened with the Donald Sterling event and everything that just kind of surrounded that. I think that is going to be the one galvanizing thing for that Clippers team. If they weren't a family and they weren't close enough at this point in the season, this right here has just solidified them and made them basically one unit, one mind, one focus, and I think that'll be their rallying cry. So Oklahoma City needs to be on guard, needs to be aware. That being said, I think that Kevin Durant is a talent like you don't see often. He just doesn't come around. He is one of those guys who can challenge LeBron James.
What the hell's going on out here?
They can go head-to-head, one-on-one, and he might win 5 times out of 10. They'll probably end up splitting because they're both equally talented guys. That being said, I think there's a little bit more talent and star power on that Oklahoma team than there might be on that Clippers team. But you have to realize what the Clippers are now working with. They are angry. They are one unit. They are one mind. The leadership of Doc Rivers to come out of that entire situation, I think there was nobody better to handle that situation than Doc Rivers and the way Doc Rivers handled it, because he basically insulated that team and said, you guys don't worry about this. I'll bite the bullet up front, and you guys just focus on winning and make this our rallying cry. So I think Oklahoma needs to be on guard with the Clippers. I think that's going to be a really close series. I think that series will probably go 7, and that's just because Oklahoma's got so much talent, and the Clippers are basically playing with a purpose now. You've given them a reason to win.
At the same time, we're talking about the NBA playoffs. The NHL playoffs are going on too. Great series. I mean, Minnesota just put a spanking on Chicago. You got the Rangers, they're trying their best and struggling a little bit. But you got the NHL playoffs, and they're kicking off too. So this is a great time in sports, and we're going to be continuing to hit on all these playoff series, as well as our Tigers and Pistons and Lions, and also too what the Red Wings do in this offseason. So this is a great time to be involved in sports. I'm loving doing this podcast, and we get to cover and talk about a lot of the important stuff in sports. And so thank you again for delivering on another great podcast. Anything that we should be looking forward to in the next week before we do the next episode?
I'd keep an eye out on those Tigers. I think the NBA playoffs, these are probably the best NBA playoffs that we've seen in a long time. And I know I've come on here and I've basically bragged the NBA, but I think these NBA playoffs have been some of the best that we've seen as of late. They've been interesting. They basically draw you in. You're into the story, and you're into the story that is either going on the court or off the court. These NHL playoffs, I think you have to watch these. These are really good. You want to upset? Montreal might beat Boston, and Boston was handpicked by basically everybody to win the Stanley Cup. So Montreal is rolling. We talked about it a little bit in a few other podcasts. They were on a mission 2 weeks before the playoffs even started, and they were just churning out wins, just eating teams alive.
Okay. Stay tuned for next week, because we'll be at episode number 40. So it's going to be good.
Oh, shit. We made 40 of these?
We made 40 of these.
Oh, shit.
Stay with us. Enjoy each episode. We thank you for downloading our podcast each and every week. Thank you for all the support by visiting our website, www.detroitsportspodcast.com. For Adam Strozinski, the Jock, I am the Doc, John Macaroon. This has been the Detroit Sports Podcast. See you later.
Greatest podcast ever. I'm an idiot. I know nothing about baseball. I don't know. Is that how the NCAA